Harvard Business Review in 1990. And the article was called The Competitive Advantage of Nations. This article is available all online. I have a copy of it. I can share it on your WhatsApp group. Don't worry about it. Uh, After that, he developed his theory further and he wrote a book called, again, Competitive Advantage of Nations. It's one of the bestsellers in management. Uh, so that is one thing that I think everybody should read. Uh, but before coming to competitive advantage, let us look at some of the other things which may be related to this. There is a term that you may have heard. It's called core competence. Now, can anyone try to explain what do we mean by the term core competence? कहीं पे पढ़ा होगा आप लोगों ने. What is core competence? Anyone? Anyone? Are you people there or you've left? I'll have to ask you to open your videos.
So knowledge, skill, and abilities.
भाई पहले तो आप लोग सब लोग अपने वीडियोस ऑन करिए. आई मीन आई कैनॉट स्पीक टू द ब्लैंक स्क्रीन. I need to see some students in front of me. Please switch on your cams. Fine, thank you. Yeah, that's better. Everybody, please switch on your cams. Good. Okay, so we are talking about core competence. So, what is core competence? So, who was telling me something about it? Anjana, you were telling me something about it.
So combination of knowledge, skills, and ability through which we are gaining the competitive advantage from our competitors.
Okay, right. Anything else? Any other idea? Core competence. Actually, the idea is there is a book called Core Competence, and this was based on uh, again two authors, C.K. Prahlad. He passed away a couple of years back, an Indian professor, and Gary Hamel. So Hamel and Prahlad wrote this book where they argued that every company should find some area of core competence. Core competence means a particular area where they have an advantage over their competitors. Right? So they need to identify. It is something like, in the marketing terms, if we talk about it's a USP. So USP is for a product. Here we are talking about a firm, a company. So a company needs to find out at least one, if possible, more than one area where they excel over their competitors. Now, this area can be anything. For example, it could be your ability to uh, make better products. It could be your ability to innovate. It could be your ability to, for example, have a very good distribution network, and so on. So every company needs to find out some area, at least one area of strength, and then keep on building an advantage over the competitors. So once we have identified that this is a particular area where we excel in, we can continue developing that area more and more so that we are always ahead of the competition. So that is the crux of what we call core competence. So many companies have their core competence. Some companies excel in their advertising and PR activities, some in their innovation. For example, a company like 3M, you must have heard of the company 3M. Have you? 3M Technologies or 3M? 3M का नाम सुना है आप लोगों ने?
यस सर, सुना है, काफी पेटेंट्स हैं इनके नाम पे।
Right. So 3M is considered to be one of the most innovative companies. In fact, annually, they apply for more than 1,000 patents annually. Not all patents are granted, but they are able to get more than 100 patents every year. And some of their innovations are, I mean, affecting our everyday life. You know, right from the kitchen to office. Can you think of any kitchen products that 3M makes, without which you cannot imagine a modern kitchen? Scotch Brite. Scotch Brite सुना है आपने? Everyone uses that scrub that you use to wash, clean your dishes. It's one of the abrasives, right? So Scotch Brite is a 3M innovation, right? 3M is also, in fact, 3M is a world leader in case of abrasives and adhesives both. Adhesives. You'll be surprised that in some, for example, in railways, in railway engines, uh, diesel engines, there are some parts which cannot be welded, and they are stuck together with help of adhesives which are manufactured by 3M. Just imagine the power of the adhesives where you can join the heavy parts. Similarly, abrasives uh, in most aircrafts, the fuel tank internally is painted with a special coating of 3M paints because it controls the erosion by the fuel. Otherwise, at such a speed, lots of things are possible. So internally as well as externally, all high-speed trains, all aircrafts, most of them are painted with 3M. So that is the kind of innovation they have. And this is their core competence. Every time you see something is innovative in the market, chances are that it's a 3M product. So right from, for example, water filters to Scotch Brite to lighting uh, instruments to something like this. This is also a 3M product. Let me show you. You know this? This is a sticky note, right? You can use it and stick it again, right? It's called Post-it. Now there are many brands, but Post-it is a 3M. So you can see that they excel in certain terms of innovation and they keep on doing it. And that is what makes them uh, the market leaders in whichever area they are in. So that's a very good example of having. Similarly, other companies, Tesla, for example, is a market leader in terms of electric vehicles. They keep on investing in it, and that is why they are ahead of their competitions, right? So almost every good company needs to find an area where they can excel and compete, keep ahead of their competition. So we can think of core competence like this. Now, another relevant thing with this competitive advantage is what we call, I don't know if you have studied in economics or in management sometime. There are these, in international trade, we call it the basis of international trade. Uh, so there are different theories of international trade. For example, there is a theory called comparative advantage and a factor endowment theory. I'm typing it down. You can see if you know this. Factor endowment theory. Again, the idea is different countries are endowed with certain resources. And in fact, it started with Adam Smith's book, Wealth of Nations, where he argued that the country which has certain resources will be able to export goods using those resources, and the country which does not have certain resources, they'll be forced to import those products. So there can be various kinds of resources. For example, land is a resource. The vaster the land, that can be used for agriculture and other things. Location is another thing. So again, I'm tapping down these things. So land, location. Location means, for example, a country is landlocked, a country has a port, a country is mountainous, a country is hard, warm or cold, tropical, etc., etc. Again, countries will have locational advantages. Then natural resources. So once again, different countries will be endowed with different natural resources, petroleum or iron ore or whichever natural resources are there. Then human resources, skilled and unskilled labor. Again, number of people living in a country. Larger the population, they have more workforce, right? So that will be there. And so basically human resources, trained human resources. And overall population that may help in consumption. For example, you have a large population that may lead to uh, more demand, more consumption, and therefore that can also be seen as one of the factors which are endowed. Right? So when Porter looked at these, he said that while all this is fine, but these are not sufficient. For example, many countries have this, may have certain resources, but every country may not be able to exploit these resources. For example, India is a vast country. We have a large population. We have so many natural resources, labor, almost everywhere. Location also, we are one of the best suited countries. We have ports, we have hills, we have almost all kinds of climates. But still, although we are a developing country, but we are still far from many other developed countries. So why is it that this is not sufficient for us? What else do we need? Right? That any kind of sustainable growth in any country cannot be based on just these, because these are uh, passive resources. No, these have been inherited resources. These are inherited resources. You are in a country, so whatever is there, it is ours, right? We do not do anything to uh, develop these resources further. And unless we don't do this, then these resources will go to waste. If you have a large population which remains unskilled or less skilled, then again we are losing, right? There's no point of having a large population where we cannot train the manpower into certain things. Similarly, if we are having certain natural resources, but we are not able to process it, if there is an iron ore in abundance in the country, and we don't have, suppose, of course, now in India we have it, but we don't have those kinds of facilities where the iron ore is converted to steel. So once again, we might be using it. We might be having large seashores, but if you're not converting the ocean, whatever, for example, marine resources or marine energy, that's a new thing that is coming up. If you're not using it, once again, we are missing out. So these passive or inherited resources needs to be exploited. So Porter said that just having the resources is not enough. We need to continuously uh, work upon these and keep on enhancing it. Otherwise, that makes no sense. And this is where he came across a model, what we call the five forces model. Let me show you this diagram. One second. I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is a typical diagram of the Porter's five forces model. You can see that these are the four or five things that he's talking about. Threat of new entrants. Tell me one thing. I'm using a cursor, so can you see the cursor on the screen also?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Cursor
sir.
दिखाई पड़ रहा है?
It is
Yes.
visible.
Fine. Fatigue. Right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
There is this threat of new entrants, bargaining power of suppliers, rivalry among existing competitors, threat of substitutes, and bargaining power of buyers. These are the five forces that constitute. Later on, we'll talk about competitive advantage. So these are the five forces which are important for any company to succeed. These are the forces that interact, and they may result in very positive inputs for a company or a very negative inputs for a company. You can see all these, for example, bargaining power of the buyers. In certain industries where buyers are having a lot of power, consumer goods, whether fast moving or uh, durables, in certain types of industries, buyers have a lot of power, bargaining power. So you can see some of these industries like even automobile industry, two-wheeler industry, garment industry, where certain industries where buyers are a little price conscious, uh, maybe quality conscious. So even a slight error might make a buyer switch the brand loyalty to some other brand. Then in certain industries, there is always a threat of new entries. New companies can keep on entering, and which may lead to uh, threat of increasing competition, encroachment of your market share, and so on. Right. Then you have the bargaining power of suppliers. In certain industries where suppliers hold the chip, now that again might be difficult for a company, where one is dependent upon certain kinds of supplies, raw material, technology, or anything else. Then rivalry among existing competitors. So if there are a number of competitors right now, there is a strong competition, and which again is something. Actually, Porter says that all these things can be positive as negative. So, for example, rivalry can be a very positive thing. In absence of rivalry, innovation is not possible. So once there is a lot of rivalry, then every company is on their toes, continuously upgrading, improving, or even innovating new products. So this is a healthy thing. So this rivalry should be seen as a very healthy thing. You know, the two drawbacks that can be there. One is, of course, it can be an ugly rivalry. You know, at times very unethical also. And the other drawback could be that there could be a carteling, where all the competitors join hands together and start exploiting the consumer, especially where the number of competitors is very low. So they can unofficially, for example, a lot of people say that there is an unwritten agreement between the Tatas and the Ashok Leyland that Tatas will focus on North India and Ashok Leyland will focus on the South India, and they are happily doing their business because there is a little competition in HCV market in India, high commercial, heavy commercial vehicles markets in India. So these kinds of things may be possible. So carteling is possible as well as unethical rivalry is possible. But in a healthy
सर
rivalry situation where, yeah,
सर व्हाट अबाउट टेलीकम्युनिकेशन इंडस्ट्री, जैसे कि यहाँ पर भी कंपटीशन बहुत कम है सर, और इनफैक्ट वहाँ पे भी कहीं ना कहीं कार्टेलिंग तो हुई
हाँ बिल्कुल हो रही है तो
डायरेक्टली
in
हमने
any
देखा है।
that's what I'm saying that these two things are possible. Cartelling is very much possible. It happens where a number of competitors are low. Just तीन चार होंगे तो cartelling possible होएगी. That is why when there were 10 12 then you saw the fall in prices. एक समय में जब इतने ढेर सारे टेलीकॉम प्रोवाइडर्स थे तो डेटा भी फ्री था और सब कुछ बहुत सस्ता था. एंड द मोमेंट यू आर लेफ्ट विथ 3 4 ऑप्शंस, वो धीमे धीमे करके वो प्राइसेस भी बढ़ रहे हैं और इवन सर्विसेज आर बैड, यू नो, because now what are you going to do? You want to port your number again, you'll go to some other person, वहाँ भी वही चल रहा है. So different industries will have this. But on the other hand, if there is a healthy rivalry, it means that product innovations will be there. It will be, in the end, beneficial for the uh, industry and the company. And lastly, threats of substitutes. So, if a product can be substituted by some other product, and if people are sensitive about it, if price is not the factor, then it may be possible that consumers may switch to a substitute product or eagerly looking for a substitute product. So that thing will always be there. Again, with the rate of innovation we are having, it is quite possible that uh, people might find a substitute. Now, this is interesting because uh, in some cases, companies are anticipating these substitution and actually they are preempting. Uh, if you look at the example of Zomato, when Zomato started a few years back, what was their model? Zomato was not a food delivery service. It was basically a restaurant finder, where you could find restaurants near you. So if you're hungry, you could just try to locate a nearby restaurant.
सर इट
It
इज जस्ट
also
लाइक
gave,
ट्रिवागो
it used
इनिशियली।
to be, yeah,
यस
it
यस
used to be like it was just an aggregator. It helped in people finding a nearby good restaurant. It also gave the power to the user to, for example, comment, rate a restaurant, write something about it, downvote it, upvote it, and so on. So initially it was just like that. But very soon, Zomato realized that the food delivery is going to, it will substitute for people going into a fine dine restaurant, or so rather people want to have it at their homes. So very quickly they shifted into food delivery also, which is now again is a success story. So companies may be able to preempt substitution, wherever it is. Some examples we all know. I think पहले हम लोगों ने discuss भी किया है class में change जब हम लोग discuss कर रहे थे तो like how LML was not able to preempt that consumers will substitute scooters with fuel efficient bikes, right? Traditional scooters with fuel efficient bikes. So these kind of threats will always there. Now the traditional vehicles are being substituted by electric driven vehicles, so electric bikes and electric cars, and so the substitutions in any industry wherever the innovations rate of innovation is high, then substitutions will be there. So the companies which are preempting substitution and they're themselves offering for it, you can look at, for example, the Intel Corp, which is always improving upon their existing chip that they're using. Every time they are increasing the speed and their microprocessor chip. Uh, Qualcomm, which is a leader in again the chip for microprocessing chip for the Android devices. So all these companies are continuously working upon it because the competition is always there and they may be substituted by something else. So this was the basic five forces model that Porter provided for companies in general. And he developed this into what we now call the competitive advantage of nations. Right? Let me show you. One second. Let me show you the competitive advantage of nation. Hold on. Okay, so this is a I think it is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Right. So these are what he calls we call the Porter's diamond or the determinants of national competitive advantage. Right? So you can see the four factors: firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. Firm strategy, that is the company that we are talking about, that company's strategy and structure, and rivalry within that particular industry. Demand conditions in that market, then related and supporting industries, and then factor conditions. Factor conditions means again factors like natural resources and other things, labor, factors that we talked about. Right. Now we can look at some countries actually to see how these things work. Look at a country like Singapore. Singapore is not it's a tiny country and hardly anything is produced there. It's not a manufacturing place. There are hardly any factories. Uh, there are hardly any natural resources. Even labor is not there because it's a small country as well as a small population. The whole country's population is about 50 lakhs. Uh, so these things are not very favorable to them. Right? Factor conditions are not great. However, at the same time, at least one factor that they have is that is the skilled manpower. Whoever is there is a skilled person. They continuously promote, uh, for example, if somebody is highly skilled, then it is easier for someone to migrate into Singapore. They have a very high standard of living, so a lot of people are attracted to stay in Singapore, and the country is open to any highly skilled person. If you're a computer engineer, if you're a quality assurance person, if you're a marketer or some service industry, wherever you are better than your competitors, you are always welcome to Singapore. So at least one factor that they are working hard is their manpower. So if they don't have, they import the manpower. They let the foreigners come and stay in their country. Right. If you look at the strategy and structure and rivalry, right? So if you take any industry in a country, for example, we talk about India, and let's take automobile sector or hardware sector, then what kind of organization structure the companies have, what kind of strategic advantages that they have, what kind of strategy they follow, and what is the rivalry. Now, rivalry is something like we saw in the five forces model. Rivalry is something that can be very healthy and it may lead to some very interesting outcomes. Right? So, the rivalry within that industry, if it's a healthy one, then naturally it may lead to some very interesting things. Once again, if you look at the Indian example, where can you think of some industries where rivalry has done really well?
Coke and Pepsi, sir.
Coke and Pepsi. Coke and Pepsi are very peculiar examples, right? This can be an example, although the example is a little. You see, Coke and Pepsi are big competitors. Otherwise, I don't know if you have friends who are working in Coke and Pepsi. We had our students working there. So once they told me that at the ground level, uh, actually they help each other at advertising, at companies, top management level, they are fierce competitors. At the ground level, they help each other. But it's not a help between companies. It is a help between human beings. Because they go to the same shops. They're lower level workers. They go to the same shops. They meet. They talk. So that is how they help each other. For example, if somebody is not meeting the target, the friend from the other company will say, वहाँ पे तुम अपना माल खपा सकते हो, you know, and they help each other like that. But yes, Coke and Pepsi is a good example of rivalry. Uh, However, in areas where we had uh, healthy competition, for example, right now in India, you can see automobile market is having good rivalry because there are a number of brands, and every brand is on their toes to innovate, offer better products, and so on. And it is one industry where you can see that right now there are about 10 or even more very strong brands. Traditional brands, you already have Hyundai and Suzuki, etc., and Tata Motors. And so many new companies are coming up with more innovative products, and which is actually forcing these traditional companies to um, further innovate and come with better products. Some companies are trying to preempt. For example, companies like Tata Motors, companies like Toyota, or even Honda, and some other companies, they are working very hard on their electric vehicles because they fear that once uh, the government changes the policy and makes it more affordable for people, then they'll always be ahead of the competitor because they're already working on the electric vehicles. Madhavendra, you've raised your hand. You want to say something?
यस सर। सर एक क्वेश्चन ये था कि जो ट्रेडिशनल एस्टेब्लिश कंपनीज हैं जैसे कि आकाश थी तो उसको जो नई यंग जनरेशन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन जैसे बायजूस ने परचेज किया उसको, और जैसे कल्टफिट ने सर जो है ट्रेडिशनल कंपनी थी जैसे गोल्ड जिम, इन सबको परचेज किया, तो क्या ट्रेडिशनल जो फर्म्स है वो बेटर परफॉर्म नहीं कर पा रही हैं? क्या रीजन है इस तरीके के टेक ओवर्स का सर मार्केट में?
या इसमें बेसिकली दो चीजें हैं। एक तो जो ट्रेडिशनल स्टार्टअप्स हैं, जो ट्रेडिशनल स्टार्टअप्स हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल गोल्ड जिम बहुत पुरानी कंपनी नहीं है, और इट वाज अ स्टार्टअप प्रमोटेड बाय अ सेलिब्रिटी। तो जैसे ही उनको एक इन्वेस्टर मिला जो कि दे वांट टू टेक ओवर बिकॉज नाउ इट इज अ fastly upcoming area. So most of these startup people, they are looking for buyers like this, right? So they get a good uh, value of their stock and they sell out. On the other hand, in many really traditional area where the company has been for 20, 30, 40 years, what is happening is, what I'm seeing is, I may be wrong, but this is my observation. Uh, in some areas, they are trying to streamline. Tata has done this exercise, I think, twice till now. Tata has been there in too many things. So once when Ratan Tata took over in 90s, they did an exercise and they streamlined it to, I think, 31 or 32 companies only. And again, they did later on. Further curtailed. They felt that certain industry is not in their core business area or whatever. So it is possible for these companies to sell off. For example, Tata sold Lakme to Unilever, right? Because somehow they felt that it's not matching or it's not in alignment with their. Now, Lakme was not a bad company or it was not a loss-making company, but still they felt that because it is not in their line of business or uh, whatever was their head, they sold that business. Similarly, they sold many other business. On the other hand, you can see that they're acquiring new businesses. For example, they've recently acquired, last year they acquired the online uh, this pharmacy company 1mg. So now it is Tata 1mg. So the thing is that many of these traditional companies wants to streamline as well as wants to be seen as uh, company with modern outlook. So they keep on doing it continuously, whether it is Tata's or even Reliance. Reliance is a traditional company. Now they're coming up with so many new things, trying their hands at so many things. And so is the case with many companies. So although it is very difficult to say that this is the reason why everyone is doing it, that I think is too early to comment upon, because we are still seeing this transition between the IT enabled companies and traditional kind of companies which operate in a traditional manner. There are these interesting things. For example, in automobile industry, uh, because I've had some interaction with people from Tata Motors as well as some other companies. Uh, for example, the Hero Group, uh, Hero Motor Corp, they're also now bifurcating. So, for example, Hero has launched a new group for electric bikes. I don't remember what name they've given it, but they've created a new company specifically for this thing. They don't want the new company to see as an extension of the existing company. जैसे बहुत सी कंपनी चाहते हैं कि हमारा पुराना नाम भी चलता रहे, but they don't want that. They don't want the new electric two-wheeler company to be associated with the traditional Hero Motor Hero Motor Corp या Hero Honda जो पहले थी. So somehow they don't want that because they feel that this is a new kind of company, so it requires a very new initiative, new brand, and everything new. So that's another strategy. On the other hand, Tatas are also launching their electric vehicles, but they are continuing with their existing network and other things. So the same Tata um, dealers, they are asked to create a department for electric vehicles. So Tata EV is one thing that is coming up. So it is still transitioning. I don't think it is uh, possible to comment finally about this. We have to wait for a couple of years, 2, 3 years, to see how it goes. Right. But that's a good point you raised. This is going to be seen how the traditional companies are going to transform. Yeah, all right. So we were talking about this Porter's Diamond. So the firm's strategy, structure, and policy is an important determinant. Then, if you look at the other things, demand conditions. So, the more demanding the customers are, the more the pressure is there on the companies to continuously improve their products, improve their competitiveness, offer better service and better products, improve the quality, and so on. So, once again, that will lead to better performance. Then, related supporting industries. Now, that's another very important area that is there. Uh, in every business, one of the backbones is the strength of the support infrastructure at the supporting industry level. Supporting industries could be, for example, simply service industries, or it could be even manufacturers or raw material suppliers. It could be at different levels. So, for example, the success of any online shopping company will depend a lot upon their ability to have a very strong supply chain. How are they going to deliver the goods finally to the consumers? They need to have a very good distribution network. Some companies, big companies like Amazon or Flipkart, have developed their own distribution network. Some companies rely on other distribution networks. Now, this has led to growth of many companies, some existing companies and some new companies, which are actually providing distribution services to these e-marketers. Right? So the stronger these are, the more it is possible for newer companies to come up. Otherwise, new companies will not come up. Similarly, if you look at, for example, infrastructure facilities, if internet is very poor, then again, online companies will not be successful. E-shopping will not be possible. So we need a very good uh, network of internet service providers. So ISPs have to be really good. So even they are the backbones of an online or e-commerce company. So which are these supporting industries and how good they are? Even in agriculture, we need, for example, things like uh, warehouses, cold storages, supply network like trucks, etc., the transportation companies. So the success of a company will depend upon the related supporting industries. And a country's competitive advantage will depend upon how it is helping the support industries as well. There is this interesting example we always see in international market. A country like Netherlands, Holland or Netherlands. Uh, why is it called Netherlands? Any idea? Why do we call Netherlands? And when we think of Netherlands, what image comes to our mind? Which products Netherlands is known for? Anybody?
No idea, sir.
Okay. So Netherlands as it is called Netherlands. Nether means below, so it is below the sea level. So that is why it is called Netherlands. when we think of Netherlands, two major things come to our mind. One is the windmills, जो हवा से चलने वाली जो wind energy वाली बड़ी बड़ी mills होती हैं. So windmills is something because that is what the country is of. And the other thing is tulips, the tulip flowers. Netherlands is known for cultivating and exporting tulips all over the world. Right now, the government provides so much support to tulip industry, tulip growers, from production to storage to transportation at every level. Yes, Isha, you're right. It is tulips. When you think of Netherlands, it's tulip. So there is a tulip research and development center over there which provides R&D support. Then the government provides lots of infrastructure facilities in terms of storage as well, because it's a perishable product. So they store, as well as when they have to export it, they need some faster transportation. So again, in that, the government supports. Now, it's not that Netherlands is the only country that produces tulip. Even in India, for example, in Kashmir Valley, tulips are there. Similarly, in many other cold countries, tulips are. But somehow, Netherlands is the world leader in terms of production of tulip, because uh, they are exploiting one, their weather is such that they can produce it more, but then they have the support of all other uh, units, like the government is there and support industry is there and so on. Similarly, if you look at a country like Denmark, now if you think of Denmark, again, what products come to your mind? डेनमार्क सोचने पे कौन सा प्रोडक्ट समझ में आता है?
Any milk product?
Some milk products.
Right, Denmark is known for the dairy industry, right? So again, the climate is such, so that's the natural resource. But then the government and other ancillaries and so many support industries are there. So and not just dairy products, but many products which come out of the dairy products. For example, Danish cookies are sold world over. Their bakery products, even those are sold. And then there is one more product, which is actually a medical product, which comes out of the dairy industry, and that is Denmark is the world leader in the production of insulin, which is used by the diabetics, right? Insulin, and uh, they use the animals, the cows and other animals, for extracting the insulin, and they have their research plants over there. And so that's kind of a byproduct that they also produce over there. So you can see that these countries, whenever you think of certain country and then you think of certain products or services that they are ahead, and the reason they are ahead is that they have this competitive advantage uh, because of the governments and supporting industries and factor conditions and strategy structure, all those things that are given in the Porter's diamond that are there, right? So government role is very important in this model, because uh, actually Porter says that government role is like that of a catalyst in the whole process, right? So it government can push the companies to raise their standards and aspirations to the higher levels, become more competitive. The government can offer more incentives for competition, innovation, etc., etc. So this was about the competitive advantage and competitive advantage of nations. All right. So yeah, anything you need to discuss?
No, sir.
Fine. So if anyone wants to discuss anything, otherwise that should be all for today's class. All right then. Thank you all very much. Tomorrow I think Prabhaji will join back.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.
बिल्कुल विश करेंगे और कानपुर जब भी आएंगे बेटे के पास में तो मेरे पास जरूर आएंगे हमारे साथ एक चाय जरूर पीएंगे